Please be aware that the first hour and a half of this meeting will be recorded so that we can put it onto our website and podcast. We record an audio only. Feel free to use the podcast on our website along with your big book as a resource if you miss the study portion of the meeting. The study portion is also listed on the website so you can follow along.
In accordance with our group conscience, on October 16th, 2023, we will also be posting our podcast on YouTube. We feel this is an effective way to carry our message to those seeking recovery in Alcoholics Anonymous, and our YouTube link will be listed in the chat as well. Go ahead, Terry.
Okay. Tonight's recap is going to be starting on page 45 and end on page 47. The study will start on page 47 and end on, is it 49?
Page 49, yes.
49, okay.
And we'll also be reading Appendix 2, Spiritual Experience.
Okay, do we have any announcements,
Trish? Do. Jamie just attended assembly this last weekend, so be on a lookout for the GSR report coming out in the next week or two. And our next group conscience will be on July 8th, where some of us will be in person at Jamie's house and the rest of us will be hybrid. Anyone is welcome to attend. Only home group members, though, would be eligible to vote.
One more thing, Trish.
Yes.
There will be an email coming out.
And Jamie froze, but there is an email, or there was an email sent out. There will be a Zoom with information on the plain book.
I'll do it.
Go ahead, Jamie.
Never mind.
There will be a Zoom on the 30th of this month with information on the plain language big book, and the link has been sent along with other information. If you're interested in attending, that will be on Zoom, and if you haven't gotten it and would like it, let me know and I can send that to you.
Fair enough. Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm a recovered alcoholic. My name is Terry. Welcome to the Lewisburg Primary Purpose Big Book Study Group. To prepare for our Big Book study, let's get focused by having a 3-minute moment of meditation followed by our family's fog light prayer.
And I'm a recovered alcoholic. My name is Trish. Thanks for joining us tonight. We're going to start the meditation in a minute, so please take a moment to get situated.
Please be aware of background noises when you are unmuted and sharing as to not distract others or yourself. We suggest you observe proper Zoom etiquette. If you wouldn't do it in a live meeting, please don't do it here. A friendly reminder, absence of profanity offends no one. Please keep yourself muted during someone else's share. We will call on you in the order hands are raised.
From the foreword to the first edition of Alcoholics Anonymous. We of Alcoholics Anonymous are many thousands of men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. To show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book and of this group.
For the meditation, some suggestions are focus your breath and posture, breathe in God and breathe out self.
Take this time to reconnect with God and let the craziness of the day drift away and ask God to help you focus on the study. And let's bring in those monks for our meditation. And let's have our fog light prayer. God, let your love shine through us like a fog light, so that those who are lost, sick, and dying can find your love through us. Amen. Now it's time for our secretary's report.
Thank you, Trish. My name is Alyssa, and I am your recovered secretary. I've asked Miss Lorraine to read the recovered statement. We read this notice to explain why people in the group identify as recovered rather than recovering, and what it exactly means to be a recovered alcoholic. Take it away, Miss Lorraine.
Oh, you're muted.
Recovered. We are not, oh, I'm so sorry, I can't even see it. We are not cured of alcoholism. Recovered, not cured. That presents a conflict to some alcoholics. If we were cured, we would be able to drink responsibly. No, we are not cured. The allergic reaction to alcohol will remain with us for a lifetime, but we have been restored to sanity. That was the problem. The main problem of the alcoholic centers in his mind rather than in his body. We are now we are now sane where alcohol is concerned. Consequently, we have recovered.
Thank you, Miss Lorraine.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us tonight. We meet every Tuesday starting at 5:30 p.m. Central Time with the Gerbil Fellowship Cage, where we chatter for an hour before the meeting starts. Feel free to bring side dishes to share with the buzzards. Our Big Book study starts promptly at 6:30 p.m. Central Time, and we ask that you be courteous and ready to begin at the foghorn. We take our Big Book study seriously, and because of this, chat will be disabled during our study. In the 1940s, when the only elements to sobriety were God, a Big Book, and one recovered alcoholic working with an untreated alcoholic, the success rates were as followed. From the forward to the second edition of Alcoholics Anonymous, page XX, of alcoholics who came to AA and really tried, 50% got sober at once and remained that way. 25% sobered up after some relapse, and the remainder, those who stayed on with AA, showed improvement. Can we have a show of hands of people joining us for the first time?
I know we have a few. Welcome, everybody.
Welcome, glad you're here. And then the recovered alcoholics. These are your potential sponsors. Is there anyone celebrating a milestone this week?
I don't see anybody.
If you should require a big book. Oh, is there
Therese?
somebody that unmuted?
Teresa, recovered alcoholic, celebrating 6 years today.
Wonderful.
Yay, Miss Therese. Congratulations.
That's awesome, Teresa.
And here's
Teresa,
your
if you want to
chip.
look at the screen, your chip is on the screen.
Congratulations.
Pinky, you had somebody else trying to identify as well.
Who is that?
Do you have another milestone?
I think it was Aisha.
Aisha, if you are celebrating, please come in and share. We'd love to celebrate with you.
Hi. Sorry, I'm sitting here with some people. So I was just going to listen, but I'm a little under 2 years. I'll have 2 years in June.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
So I'm almost there. I live out in Montana. There wasn't any meetings online right now here, so thank you guys for being here.
You're welcome here.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you all.
Glad you're here. All right. If you should require a big book of your own, we have large print editions available that can be sent to you by buzzard mail. Delivery time questionable. Please remember to practice our 7th tradition by donating to the group address, Venmo, or PayPal, posted in the chat and on the screen. Our suggestion is to purchase a big book and take an untreated alcoholic through the program of recovery. Please visit our website posted in the chat. Thank you and see you next week.
Thank you so much, Alyssa.
And Lorraine.
I'm sorry, what did you say? I'm sorry.
Oh, and Lorraine, both.
And Lorraine, yes, for reading our recovered statement. Thank you. From chapter 2, there is a solution. The tremendous fact for every one of us is that we have discovered a common solution. We have a way out on which we can absolutely agree and upon which we can join in brotherly and harmonious action. This is the great news this book carries to those who suffer from alcoholism.
This is an open meeting, and as such, all who have an interest in alcoholism and our program of recovery are welcome. Because this is an open meeting, you need not identify yourself nor your reason for being here if you do not wish to do so. Your anonymity will be protected. We ask that you protect ours.
Well, this is an open meeting. Membership in this group is limited to those who wish to recover from alcoholism and have a desire to stop drinking for good and all. Each member of Alcoholics Anonymous is a potential sponsor of a new member and should clearly recognize the obligations and duties of such a responsibility.
Before we begin our study of the Big Book, last week we reviewed Tradition 6. Tonight, let's take a quick look at Tradition 7. Please refer to page 562 of Alcoholics Anonymous.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Molly, and I am a recovered alcoholic. So I'm going to start by reading the short version of Tradition 7. Every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. And the long version The AA groups themselves ought to be fully supported by the voluntary contributions of their own members. We think that each group should soon achieve this ideal, that any public solicitation of funds using the name of Alcoholics Anonymous is highly dangerous, whether by groups, clubs, hospitals, or other outside agencies. That acceptance of large gifts from any source or of contributions carrying any obligation, whatever, is unwise. Then, too, we view with much concern those AA treasuries which continue, beyond prudent reserves, to accumulate funds for no stated AA purpose. Experience has often warned us that nothing can so surely destroy our spiritual heritage as futile disputes over property, money, and authority. Well, there's a lot in there. And I'm just going to sort of go from what I found and what I related to during the course of my explorations here. The first thing I want to share with you is a story that Bill has in his chapter in Tradition 7 in the 12 and 12 that I think really points out the prudency of this tradition. When Jack Alexander's Saturday Evening Post piece broke in 1941, thousands of frantic letters from distraught alcoholics and their families hit the foundation. That's what we were called back then. In 1954, the name of the Alcoholic Foundation Incorporated was changed to the General Service Board of Alcoholics Anonymous, Inc., and the foundation office is now the General Service Office. So family hit the foundation letterbox in New York. Our office staff, in quotes, Bill says, consisted of 2 people, one devoted secretary and myself. How could this landslide of appeals be met? We'd have to have some more full-time help, that was sure. So we asked the AA groups for voluntary contributions. Would they send us $1 a member a year? Otherwise, this heartbreaking mail would have to go unanswered. To my surprise, the response of the groups was slow. I got mighty sore about it. Looking at this avalanche of mail one morning at the office, I paced up and down, ranting how irresponsible and tightwad my fellow members were. Just then an old acquaintance stuck a tousled and aching head in the door. He was our prize slippee. I could see he had an awful hangover. Somebody unmuted? He was our prize slippee. I could see he had an awful hangover. Remembering some of my own, my heart filled with pity. I motioned him to my inside cubicle and produced a $5 bill. As my total income was $30 a week at the time, this was a fairly large donation. Lois really needed the money for groceries, but that didn't stop me. The intense relief on my friend's face warmed my heart. I felt especially virtuous as I thought of all the ex-drunks who wouldn't even send the foundation $1 apiece. And here I was, gladly handing over a $5 investment to fix a hangover. The meeting that night was at New York's old 24th Street clubhouse. During the intermission, the treasurer gave a timid talk on how broke the club was. That was in the period when you couldn't mix money and AA. But finally he said it. The landlord would put us out if we didn't pay up. He concluded his remarks by saying, "Now, boys, please go heavier on the hat tonight, will you?" I heard all this quite plainly as I was piously trying to convert a newcomer who sat next to me. The hat came in my direction and I reached into my pocket. Still working on my prospect, I fumbled and came up with a 50-cent piece. Somehow it looked like a very big coin. Hastily, I dropped it back and fished out a dime, which clinked thinly as I dropped it in the hat. Hats never got folding money in those days. Then I woke up. I, who had boasted my generosity that morning, was treating my own club worse than the distant alcoholics who had forgotten to send the foundation their dollars. I realized that my $5 gift to the slippy was an ego-feeding proposition, bad for him and bad for me. There was a place in AA where spirituality and money would mix, and that was in the hat. That story just really stood out to me because it's so easy for ego to become attached to a lot of things, but especially when it comes to money. And that really struck a chord for me. But I also started thinking about it in terms of not just money, but fully self-supporting as a person, and what that contributes to the group as a whole. And the last little note I wrote for myself was, it means maintaining my individuality in a group while being a contributing member of the group. Every group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. What is truly self-supporting? If we're not truly self-supporting, there is no equality. If we do not decline outside contributions, we are open to being influenced through the basic concept of I scratch your back, you scratch mine, or you owe me. I grew up in a family myself where I was not fully self-supporting. I was very much taken care of, and it set me up to not be able to support myself in more ways than just money. I never felt safe financially or truly independent when I wasn't earning my own way, or contributing within the family in some way, or to friendships, or whatever organization that I belonged to. I never felt equal because I didn't make as much or know as much. This is something I can still slip into today, but I recognize my growth in how I contribute in as an individual who is a member of. The rooms of AA and recovery programs in general have taught me to succeed. I have learned how to, in this way, take this in the right spirit of things, please, to keep me healthy and to stay independent so that I can be a better member of a group. And right now I'm not sure if any of this is making sense or not, but these are the things that came to me when I was writing this down. Within AA, by passing the basket, we maintain our autonomy and our integrity as individuals, which carries over into our groups, because only asking for a voluntary and basically anonymous contribution, and by keeping only what the group needs for its rent, support of other AA offices and structures, we stay available to other alcoholics. We keep Alcoholics Anonymous growing, and we keep it alive. And in doing so, As individuals, we show responsibility and have the grace of self-respect. Anyway, I know that's sort of coming at it from a few different places, but that's what I got for it when I was studying the 7th step this past week. So thank you for letting me serve, and I'll see you next week with 8.
Wonderful job, Molly. Thank you so much.
That was wonderful. Okay, now we're moving on to that ain't in the book. We hear a lot of stuff said in meetings that can't be reconciled with the program as described in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. What follows is one of the things we often hear, along with what the Big Book has to say on the subject. So, William is going to read to us. Well, first, the saying is, remember your last drunk. William, page 24, paragraph 2.
You're muted, William.
Thank you. Page 24, paragraph 2. The facts of most alcoholics, for reason yet
No, is that it?
obscure.
Nope, starts at we are unable.
Page 24.
Yeah, paragraph 2. We are unable.
Okay. Gotcha. We'll without defense against the first drink. That's it.
Remember your last drink, and now you're going to answer with, we are unable at times. Page 24, paragraph 2.
I'm on page 24, paragraph 2. I
We
came
are
down
unable.
to the at the bottom of page.
We are unable.
Middle of the paragraph.
It's
In the middle of the
in
paragraph?
italics.
Okay. I got you. In the middle of the paragraph, I got it. We're
Oh, there it
unable
is.
at certain time. We're unable at certain time to bring into our conscious, without sufficient force, the memory of the suffering and the humiliation of even a week or a month ago. That's it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, one more sentence. We are.
We are without defense against the first drink. We're
Beautiful.
without defense
Thank you.
of the first drink.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So much.
As we study, please make use of the pens, highlighters, and rulers so that you can share this experience with another alcoholic.
In order for us to stay focused as we study the Big Book, we use the Big Book Study Guide prepared by Joe and Charlie and Krusty Cliff of the Dallas Primary Purpose Group.
Tonight we're going to start our recap on page 45, which will be read tonight by Marilyn, followed by our study portion, which will be read by Stephanie. We're also going to visit Appendix 2, Spiritual Awakening, as a part of our reading tonight.
That'll be read by Art.
Excuse me.
Okay, after the page is read, we will ask questions from the imaginary podium, starting back where our study portion began on page 47. The answers will be one sentence unless otherwise specified, and multi-part questions are simply a one-sentence answer, split up by commas, semicolons, hyphens, and other fun bits of punctuation.
Basically, in English, what that means is we're going to read the material once through and then dissect the information a second time through the question and answer format. Notice how the language in the questions gives us a new light in which to consider the study material.
This is important because hearing the question and rereading the content offers a definite way of comprehending the material covered. After we've completed the study, we open up for comment, questions, and observations based on what was just read. If you have spiritual experiences with this information, you are free to share. Please keep your share on topic and under 5 minutes. At the 5-minute mark, you may hear a timer beep to let you know that your time is finished, or Jamie may hold up a cute puppy.
However, Big Book study is not therapy. Should you begin sharing on topics which are more appropriately discussed in a different setting, for example with a sponsor, please do not be offended when we cut that conversation short and send the buzzards nipping at your heels. For that purpose, we have fellowship meetings before and after our study time.
You can never go wrong by commenting on the page's study, which brings us to the words of one of the co-founders of Alcoholics Anonymous. Sobriety, freedom from alcohol, through the teaching and practice of the 12 steps is the sole purpose of any Alcoholics Anonymous group.
And before we get started, we're going to take a look at how we arrived at this point, because we didn't just randomly open the book tonight and say we're going to study page 47. This group started in January of 2020, and we started reading with the question and answer format that we use, starting on the title page where we see our first promise, how many thousands of men and women have recovered from alcoholism. And we read through the preface, the forewords, doctor's opinion, and Bill's story, which shows us a great example of a 12-step call. And then we will go through each chapter, line by line, sentence by sentence, all the way up to page 164. We also then read Dr. Bob's Nightmare. We spend 2 weeks on the traditions. And then we spend 1 more week on the spiritual experience, because it is included in the study 3 times, but then since it's so important, we bring it in as our final and 94th week of the study. And then after we do that, we're not done. We go all the way back to the beginning and we start the book all over again. So we're in the 4th year of our group. We're in our 3rd season of going through the book. And each time we go through it, I learn more.
Okay, before we start the recap, we will need 5 or 6 virtual hands raised if you would like to be one of our answer readers. Please be aware that the first hour and a half of this meeting will be recorded so that we can put it into our website and our YouTube channel.
So Marilyn, come on in now with our recap, and this is the portion that we read and studied last week.
Hi everyone, my name is Marilyn and I'm a recovered alcoholic. We know how he feels. We have shared his honest doubt and prejudice. Some of us have been violently anti-religious. To others, the word God brought up a particular idea of him which someone had tried to impress them during childhood. Perhaps we are rejected this particular conception because it seemed inadequate. With a rejection, we imagined we had abandoned the God idea entirely. We were with the thought that faith and dependence upon a power beyond ourselves was somewhat weak and even cowardly. We look upon this world of wearing individuals, wearing theological systems and inexplicable calamity with deep skepticism. We looked askance at many individuals who claim to be godly. How could a supreme being have anything to do with it all? And who could comprehend a supreme being anyhow? Yet in other moments we found ourselves thinking, when enchanted by a starlit night, who then made all this? There was a feeling of awe and wonder, but it was fleeting and soon lost. Yes,
we of agnostic temperament have had the thought and the experience. Let us make haste to reassure. We found that as soon as we were able to lay aside prejudice and express even willingness to believe in a power greater than ourselves, we commenced to get results, even though it was impossible for any of us to fully define or comprehend that power which is God. Much to our relief, we discovered we did not need to consider another's conception of God. Our own conception, however inadequate, was sufficient to make the approach and to effect contact with Him. As soon as we admitted the possible existence of creative intelligence, a spirit of the universe, underlying in totality of things, we began to be possessed of a new sense of power and direction, provided we took other simple steps. We found that God does not make too hard terms with them, those who we seek. To us, the realm of the Spirit is broad and roomy and all-inclusive, never exclusive or forbidding. To those who earnestly seek, it is open, we believe, to all men. When, therefore, we speak to you of God, we mean your own conception of God. This applies to two other spiritual expressions which you find in this book. Do not let the prejudice you have against spiritual terms deter you from honestly asking yourselves what they mean to you. At the start, this was all we needed to commence spiritual growth, to affect our first consciousness relation with God as we understood Him. Afterward, we found ourselves accepting many things which had seemed entirely out of reach. That was growth. But if we wished to grow, we had to begin somewhere. So we used our own conception, however limited it was. We decided to ask ourselves but one short question. Do I now believe, or am I willing to believe, that there is a power greater than myself? As soon
Stop,
as a man
Marilyn,
can
stop there. You're moving into this week.
Yeah.
Okay, and the lovely Miss Steph will be read our study tonight, starting on page 47, with "We needed to ask questions," and ending on page 49.
Thank you. Stephanie, recovered alcoholic. We needed to ask ourselves but one short question. Do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe, that there is a power greater than myself? As soon as a man can say that he does believe, or is willing to believe, we emphatically assure him that he is on his way. It has been repeatedly proven among us that upon this simple cornerstone, a wonderfully effective spiritual structure can be built.
Okay, yeah, we're going to bring in Art now to read the spiritual experience, or spiritual.
Hi everybody, my name is Art. I'm a grateful recovered alcoholic. This is from page 567, Appendix 2, Spiritual Experience. The terms spiritual experience and spiritual awakening are used many times in this book, which upon careful reading shows that the personality change sufficient to bring about recovery from alcoholism has manifested itself among us in many different forms. Yet it is true that our first printing gave many readers the impression that these personality changes or religious experiences must be in the nature of sudden and spectacular upheavals. Happily for everyone, this conclusion is erroneous. In the first few chapters, a number of sudden revolutionary changes are described. Though it was not our intention to create such an impression, many alcoholics have nevertheless concluded that in order to recover, they must acquire an immediate and overwhelming God consciousness, followed at once by a vast change in feeling and outlook. Among our rapidly growing membership of thousands of alcoholics, such transformations, though frequent, are by no means the rule. Most of our experiences are what the psychologist William James calls the educational variety, because they develop slowly over a period of time. Quite often, friends of the newcomer are aware of the difference long before he is himself. He finally realizes that he has undergone a profound alteration in his reaction to life, that such a change could hardly have been brought about by himself alone. What often takes place in a few months could seldom have been accomplished by years of self-discipline. With few exceptions, our numbers find that they have tapped an unsuspected inner resource, which they presently identify with, come on, separate these pages. With their own conception of a power greater than themselves. Most of us think this awareness of a power greater than ourselves is the essence of spiritual experience. Our more religious members call it God consciousness. Most emphatically, we wish to say that any alcoholic capable of honestly facing his problems in the light of our experience can recover, provided he does not close his mind to all spiritual concepts. He can only be defeated by an attitude of intolerance or belligerent denial. We find that no one need have difficulty with the spirituality of the program. Willingness, honesty, and open-mindedness are the essentials of recovery, but these are indispensable. There is a principle which is a bar against all information, which is proof against all arguments, and which cannot fail to keep a man in everlasting ignorance. That principle is contempt prior to investigation. And that's a quote from Herbert Spencer.
Thank you, Art. Back to you, Steph.
That was great news to us, for we had assumed we could not make use of spiritual principles unless we accepted many things on faith which seemed difficult to believe. When people presented us with the spiritual approaches, how frequently did we all say, "I wish I had what that man has. I'm sure it would work if I could only believe as he believes, but I cannot accept as surely true the many articles of faith which are so plain to him." So it was comforting to learn that we could commence at a simpler level. Besides a seemingly inability to accept much on faith, we often found ourselves handicapped by obstinacy, sensitiveness, and unreasoning prejudice. Many of us have been so touchy that even casual reference to spiritual things made us bristle with antagonism. This sort of thinking had to be abandoned. Though some of us resisted, we found no difficulty in casting aside such feelings. Faced with alcoholic destruction, we soon became as open-minded on spiritual matters as we had tried to be on other questions. In this respect, alcohol was a great persuader. It finally beat us into a state of reasonableness. Sometimes this was a tedious process. We hope no one else will be prejudiced for as long as some of us were. The reader may still ask why he should believe in a power greater than himself. We think there are good reasons. Let us have a look at some of them. The practical individual of today is a stickler for facts and results. Nevertheless, the 20th century readily accepts theories of all kinds, provided they are firmly grounded in fact. We have numerous theories, for example, about electricity. Everybody believes them without a murmur of doubt. Why this ready acceptance? Simply because it is impossible to explain what we see, feel, direct, and use without a reasonable assumption as a starting point. Everybody nowadays believes in scores of assumptions for which there is good evidence, but no perfect visual proof. And does not science demonstrate that visual proof is the weakest proof? It is being constantly revealed as mankind studies the material world, that outward appearances are not inward reality at all. To illustrate, the prosaic steel girder is a mass of electrons whirling around each other at an incredible speed. These tiny bodies are governed by precise laws, and these laws hold true throughout the material world. Science tells us so. We have no reason to doubt it. When, however, the perfectly logical assumption is suggested that underneath the material world and life as we see it, there is an all-powerful, guiding, creative intelligence right there, our perverse streak comes to the surface and we laboriously set out to convince ourselves it isn't so. We read wordy books and indulge in windy arguments thinking we believe this universe needs no God to explain it. Were our contentions true, it would follow that life originated out of nothing, means nothing, and proceeds nowhere. Instead of regarding ourselves as intelligent agents, spearheads of God's ever-advancing creation, we agnostics and atheists chose to believe that our human intelligence was the last word, the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end of all. Rather vain of us, wasn't it?
Thank you, Steph. Okay, for our answer readers, I have 5 of you. Thank you. Please speak clearly into your microphones. We will ask the questions from our script by Joe and Charlie and Krusty Cliff. The answers to the questions will be sentence by sentence, coming directly out of this week's study, beginning with the first sentence and ending with the last one. Okay, my batting order is Kenny, Nancy, William, Molly, and Jim. Thank you all for volunteering. Okay, starting on page 47 with how limited it was, I believe. Nope. We needed to ask ourselves. That's where we're going to start. Okay, so we're going to start with Kenny. What question do we need to ask ourselves? This is 2 sentences, please.
We needed to ask ourselves but one short question. Do I now believe, or am I willing to believe, that there's a power greater than myself?
And I'm going to be coming in a couple of times with some comments, and here's the first one. A very wise man once said, I believe I would rather try to live my life thinking there is a God and find out I am wrong, than try to live my life thinking there is no God and find out I was wrong.
Okay, Nancy. Oh, wait, you moved. Are you still with us, Nancy?
Yes.
Nancy's still there.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Okay. As soon as we can say yes to that question, where are we?
As soon as a man can say that he does believe or is willing to believe, we emphatically assure him that he is on his way.
Hey, William, what has been proven?
It has been repeatedly proven among us that upon this simple cornerstone, a wonderful, effective spiritual structure can be built.
And see the footnote. It says, please be sure to read Appendix 2 on spiritual experience. Note Bill's plea for us to read Appendix 2. He told us to do it on page 25 and again on page 27. But he knows we're not good about following directions, so now he says please. It's hard to say no to a begging alcoholic. But we have been there and done it, so we're going to do it again. So keep your finger in page 47. We're coming back there. And then flip over to the spiritual experience on page 567. And while you do that, I have another comment, an introduction to the spiritual experience. The only significant change that has been made in the basic text, or the first 164 pages plus the doctor's opinion of the Big Book, is the one that produced the need for Appendix 2. Step 12 in the first printing read, having had a spiritual experience from the result of this course of action. In reading Bill's story, we read where he had a sudden spiritual experience as the result of these steps. Dr. Bob, on the other hand, had a very slowly developed spiritual awakening. Many of those reading the first printing of the Big Book were not experiencing Bill's hot flash and felt they were missing something. To correct that misconception, Bill reworded Step 12 to what it now reads and added Appendix 2 as an explanation. So we'll now do the questions for the spiritual experience.
Okay, so we're Molly. Where'd Molly go? There she is. Okay, so we're on page 567. The conclusion is what? Read the first two paragraphs.
Spiritual experience. The terms spiritual experience and spiritual awakening are used many times in this book, which upon careful reading shows that the personality change sufficient to bring about recovery from alcoholism has manifested itself among us in many different forms. Yet it is true that our first printing gave many readers the impression that these personality changes or religious experiences must be in the nature of sudden and spectacular upheavals. Happily for everyone, this conclusion is erroneous.
Thank you, Molly. Okay, Jim, in the stories in the first chapters, which spiritual event was described?
In the first few chapters, a number of sudden revolutionary changes were described.
Eddie, back to you. Did most alcoholics believe that they too must have a spiritual experience?
Though it was not our intention to create such an impression, many alcoholics nevertheless concluded that in order to recover, they must acquire an immediate and overwhelming God consciousness, followed at once by a vast change in feelings and outlook.
Thank you. Nancy, are such transformations frequent?
Among our rapidly growing membership of thousands of alcoholics, such transformations, though frequent, are by no means the rule.
Okay, William, this is a two-parter. What do most of our members experience, and why did William James call them that?
Can you skip me? I got lost there. Just skip them.
Okay, we're going to go to Molly. Okay, go ahead.
Most of our experiences are what the psychologist William James calls the educational variety, because they develop slowly over a period of time.
Thank you. Okay, back to you, Jim. Very often, who are the first to notice a change that has taken place?
Quite often, friends of the newcomer are aware of the difference long before he himself is.
Penny, another two-parter. What does the alcoholic finally realize, and could he have accomplished this himself?
He finally realized that he has undergone a profound alteration in his reaction to life. That such a change could hardly have been brought about by himself alone.
Nancy, what could seldom have been accomplished by self-discipline?
What often takes place in a few months could seldom have been accomplished by years of self-discipline.
Okay, William, another two-parter. With a few exceptions, what
Skip
do
me,
we...
skip. Hey, keep skipping me. Skip
Okay.
me, skip me
Oh.
here.
For the rest of the time, should I take you off? Okay.
Okay, that's good. That's good. You can take me out.
Okay, Molly.
Okay,
What,
with few exceptions?
Yes.
With few exceptions, our members find that they have tapped an unexpected inner resource which they presently identify with their own conception of a power greater than themselves.
Okay. Jim, what do most of us think?
Most of us think this awareness of a power greater than ourselves is the essence of spiritual experience.
Thank you. Kenny, what do religious folks call it?
Our more religious member calls it God consciousness.
Oh, thank you, Nancy. Two parts. What do we wish to say emphatically to any alcoholic? And what is one condition the alcoholic must meet?
Most emphatically, we wish to say that any alcoholic capable of honestly facing his problems in the light of our experience can recover, provided he does not close his mind to all spiritual concepts.
Thank you. Molly, what will defeat an alcoholic?
He can only be defeated by an attitude of intolerance or belligerent denial.
True. Okay, Jim, what is it that no one should have difficulty with?
We find that no one need have difficulty with the spirituality of the program.
Thank you. Kenny, back to you. What are the essentials of recovery?
Willingness, honesty, and open-mindedness are the essentials of recovery.
Thank you. Nancy, how important are they?
But these are indispensable.
Okay, Molly, what will keep a person in everlasting ignorance?
There is a principle which is a bar against all information, which is proof against all arguments, and which cannot fail to keep a man in everlasting ignorance. That principle is contempt prior to investigation. Herbert Spencer.
And
okay, now let... Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Let's return back to our study on page 47 where we left off.
Okay, are you ready, Jim?
Yes, I am.
Okay, why was this great news for us?
That was great news to us, for we had assumed we could not make use of spiritual principles unless we accepted many things on faith which seemed difficult to believe.
Thank you. Kenny, when recovered alcoholics presented spiritual approaches to our problem, what did we say? 3 sentences.
When people presented us with spiritual approaches, we frequently did we all say, I wish I had what that man had. I'm sure it would work if I only believed as he believed. But I cannot accept as surely the true the many articles of faith which are so plain for him, to him.
Thank you. Thanks, Kenny. Nancy, what was comforting to learn?
So it was comforting to learn that we could commence at a simpler level.
Thank you. Molly, 2-parter. What were we unable to do and what was our handicap?
Besides a seeming inability to accept much on faith, we often found ourselves handicapped by obstinacy, sensitiveness, and unreasoning prejudice.
Thank you. Jim, how do many of us react to the mention of spiritual things?
Many of us have been so touchy that even casual reference to spiritual things made us bristle with antagonism.
Thank you. Kenny, is this sort of thinking okay?
This sort of thinking had to be abandoned.
Thank you. Nancy, even though some of us resisted the idea, what happened?
Though some of us resisted, we found no great difficulty in casting aside such feelings.
Okay, Molly, another two-parter. Faced with what and we became what?
Faced with alcoholic destruction, we soon became as open-minded on spiritual matters as we had tried to be on other questions.
Does this sound like step 1 and step 2?
Okay, Jim, what persuaded us?
In this respect, alcohol was a great persuader.
Thank you. Kenny, it did what?
It finally beat us into a state of reasonableness.
Okay, sure did. Nancy, the two-parter, what did this happen easily? And what is one of our hopes?
Sometimes this was a tedious process. We hoped no one else would prejudice for as long as some of us were.
Thank you. Molly, what may the reader still ask?
The reader may still ask why he should believe in a power greater than himself.
Okay, Jim, what kind of reasons are there?
We think there were good reasons.
Kenny, what are we going to do?
Let us have a look at some of them.
Okay, Nancy, who likes facts? Who likes facts and results?
The practical individual of today is a stickler for facts and results.
Thank you. Molly, another two-parter. At this point in history, what are we willing to accept? And they must be based on what?
Nevertheless, the 20th century readily accepts theories of all kinds, provided they are firmly grounded in fact.
Jim, what theory does Bill use as an example?
Oh, is that me? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Okay,
we have
go ahead.
numerous theories, for example, about electricity.
Okay, Kenny, who doubts this power?
Everybody believes them without a murmur of doubt.
True, thank you. Nancy, 2 sentences. Why this ready acceptance? Wait. Okay, there's 2 sentences.
This power.
Why?
Why the ready acceptance? Simply because it is impossible to explain what we see, feel, direct, and use without a reasonable assumption as a starting point.
Thank you. Molly, another two-parter. Everybody now believes what, but what is lacking?
Everybody nowadays believes in scores of assumptions for which there is good evidence, but no perfect visual proof.
Thank you. Jim, what has science demonstrated?
And does not science demonstrate that visual proof is the weakest proof?
Thank you. And Kenny, what is constantly being revealed? Stop at the colon.
It is constantly revealed as mankind studies the material world that the outward appearance or not inward reality at all. To illustrate,
Nancy, what is a steel girder?
The prosaic steel girder is a mass of electrons whirling around each other at incredible speed.
Okay, Molly, this is 3 sentences. Do we doubt this theory?
These tiny bodies are governed by precise laws, and these laws hold true throughout the material world. Science tells us so. We have no reason to doubt it.
Jim, what happens when somebody wants to talk about God?
When, however, the perfectly logical assumption is suggested that underneath the material world and life as we see it, there is an all-powerful, guiding, creative intelligence. Right there, our perverse streak comes to the surface and we laboriously set out. Oop, I lost my place. Set out to convince ourselves it isn't so.
Okay, thank you. Kenny, what thinking are we trying to support when we read books and engage in arguments?
We read wordy books and indulge in winning argument, thinking we believe this universe need no God to explain it.
Thank you, Nancy. If we were right, what would be true?
Were our contentions true, it would follow that life originated out of nothing, means nothing, and proceeds nowhere.
Okay, Molly, another two-parter. How should we consider ourselves, and how do some of us consider ourselves?
Instead of regarding ourselves as intelligent agents, spearheads of God's ever-advancing creation, we agnostics and atheists choose to believe that our human intelligence was the last word, the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and end of all.
Thank you. And Jim, is that rather egotistical of us?
It's rather vain of us, wasn't it?
Yes.
Thank you, everybody.
There's a comment there, Trish.
Trish, you have a final comment.
If we're so damn smart, why can't we stay sober?
Perfect. Okay, we will now open the floor for sharing. If you have experience with a portion of the book that was just read, please feel free to share. A friendly reminder as we share, absence of profanity offends no one. We are open for comment, questions, and observations based on what was just read. If you have spiritual experiences with this information, you are free to share. Okay, who's going first?
I'll come in, Terry. I'm Trish and I'm an alcoholic.
It's Trish.
The part that always jumps out at me, or not always, but oftentimes, on the bottom of page 47, when people presented us with spiritual approaches, how frequently did we all say, I wish I had what that man has. I'm sure it would work if I could only believe as he believes. But I cannot accept as surely true as the many articles of faith which are so plain to him. I was always so busy comparing my beliefs to other people and looking at the chaos in my life and what seemed to be calmness in other people's lives and thinking if I could only believe what they believe, if I could only believe how they believe in what they believe, my life would be so much more calmer than it is now. Not being willing or able to accept that God was right there with me. And I just had to open my mind and my heart to the fact that God was in my life and God wanted to be in my life. But I kept trying to walk away from him every time I got close. And then that one of those last couple of sentences where our contention's true, it would follow that life originated out of nothing, meant nothing, and precedes nothing. And then we agnostics and atheists chose to believe that our human intelligence was the last word. I always thought, or always felt, that once God put me down on this earth, that was it. God didn't want a whole lot more interaction with me, and I was left on my own. Never realizing again that, God was always there. God always wanted to know who I was. God always wanted a relationship with me. But I couldn't believe it because I couldn't see it. But once I started believing, once I became willing to have that belief in God, then that path that I was on became so much more calm and so much less chaotic. And no longer did I feel like my thoughts were the last thoughts. And I realized that, God was there. God always wanted to be there. God always wanted to have a part in my life. And once I was able to accept that and accept God into my life and accept that God wanted to be a part of my life, that spiritual experience, that spiritual awakening began as I became willing to say, God is the one who's in charge of my life. And like the spiritual experience, the ending of the spiritual experience, willingness, honesty, and open-mindedness are the essentials of recovery. And who is in my life are the essentials of recovery. God, the other people, and then followed by the other people who guide me and who help me and who are walking along with me. It's not me first and everybody else second, and then God fits in there somewhere. I've got to have God first. Thanks.
Thanks, Trish. Molly.
Hey everybody, Molly, recovered alcoholic. The sentence that starts on bottom of page 47, besides a seeming inability to accept much on faith, we often found ourselves handicapped by obstinacy, sensitiveness, and unreasoning prejudice. And, I was all of those things. When I first came into the rooms of recovery, the hair would go up on the back of my neck when the word God was mentioned. I would get uptight. I would get defensive. I wouldn't even stand in the circle and say the Lord's Prayer. I would not hold hands during that part of the meeting. And thank God, I can say that now, even though, my concept of a higher power is different from yours, is different from yours, is different from yours. Thank God I was willing to stay around long enough to understand that it wasn't the religions that I was introduced to of my youth, or the people that knocked on the door and tried to convince me that if I didn't do this, I was going to hell. It wasn't threatening. It wasn't going to, how do I put this without sounding, in the way I thought, it wasn't going to take over and control my life and make me into some puppet. What I didn't know was that there was strength in letting go and allowing this belief in something greater than myself. I was pretty sure all along that there was something. I know that when I would get on an airplane, I would either hold the person's hand next to me or grab the arms of the chairs on either side of me, and I would say, please God, if you just get me there, please just see us all safely. And that was the only time I ever prayed. But that was one of the most concrete instances in which I truly learned to let go. And what did I do in the letting go? I asked for help from a power greater than myself. I never looked at it that way before. It just didn't occur to me. It was just rote, automatic, whatever you want to call it. But when you get on an airplane, when I get on an airplane. I'm giving my life over. Because something holding that piece of metal up there. And I know there's scientific stuff that goes on with the wind, blah, blah, blah. But it still doesn't make any sense to me. So, to me, there's got to be something greater than myself that gets me from point A to point B so that, I can go see my grandchild now. I have little miracles in my life almost every day, whether it's finding a parking place, getting through to an 800 number without having to wait for an hour. I at this point, no cars coming so that I can cross the street on a red because I'm running late for work. Whatever it is, I choose to look at all of these things as small miracles. And once in a while, I get something bigger, like a grandchild. I was told I was never going to have that opportunity. So, I went from an obstinate, oversensitive, what's the other word? Prejudice person to somebody who gets to see the miracles that happen every day. Do I occasionally still stamp my foot and say, why isn't this happening for me? Why can't I have this or that? Why can't this be easier? Whatever. I'm human. And that's another thing I got to learn when I was in this program, is that it's okay that I'm human and that it's progress, not perfection. Anyway, that's enough on me. Thank you very much, Molly, recovered alcoholic.
Thanks, Molly. Who's next? Or I get to pick on people. Jim, are you looking for your mute? Hi, Kat.
Hi, I'm Kat. I'm an alcoholic. And I grew up Catholic, punishing God and all that. And I always wanted what other people had, coming around in the program. I've been coming around for a little while. And I have 35 days sober today. And things that have been happening, this is a miracle right here. Because, I reached the point of desperation. That's what happened. I reached that desperation point, and I did cry out to God, and I told him, this is it, man. I'm at the precipice of something, and I want it to be, not jumping off a bridge. And he answered me. And so, is it odd or is it God? It is not just odd. It is not just coincidence, the things that have happened to me in the past 35 days. Even before that, when I was trying to stop drinking and I couldn't on my own. And, thank God for the pickles who really were there for me and helped me wean off of this alcohol so that I could have a chance to get what you guys have, and I've always wanted that. And, I always wondered, well, how did this person get so damn spiritual? How did this happen? And I don't know, things have happened to me that are just undeniable, that God is working in my life and that I just need to trust him. I have an upcoming surgery and I'm really scared about it, you know. But I have to trust God that it's what I need to do, and He'll get me through it, you know. It's scary, but I just need to trust and not be afraid, you know, because I'm pretty tired of being afraid. And the trust part, it's really good to feel like He is watching over me because of, you know, like I said, everything that's happened in this time that I've been back. And I'm glad to be back, and I'm so grateful to be back. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Kat. Xavier.
Good evening, Xavier, recovered alcoholic. Enjoying the snowstorm. We're making hamburgers and steak in the snow right now. All right, yeah. Always a fun topic. I, all the way back from I think when I was beyond lost, when I was in and out of psych wards, to I think the greatest miracle in my life is actually losing that obsession and not drinking all the time. Um, it's pretty. I can't think of a greater miracle than that. That's given me the life that I have, and everything else is bonus. What I find is, my apologies, my dog's through the deer. What I find is, with regard to like my view of God, or it's not. I'm a big believer in like I didn't have God and now I have God and now everything's good and it used to be bad. Like I think it's a moment for me. It's a moment by moment thing, and um, one moment I could be annoyed because my 3-year-old just walked in, and I feel like at that moment I'm probably not with God. At another moment I can totally like be on a different plane, and it's just a moment by moment thing. And when I invite God into my everyday life, especially through a lot of step work, these mechanics that I've learned to do through this program, I find a lot of growth, but that can regress in 2 seconds when I take my will back and my self-centeredness comes back. It's always changing. Like lately, I've been doing a lot of like affirmations and a lot of meditation and manifestation, and that stuff is fun. But I think it's more like icing on the cake. Like it's cool. Like, oh, I can manifest money. Like it's really fun to play with. But I'll be honest, like none of it matters if I'm not sober. And I think I'm very hyper aware. Literally nothing in life matters. My family doesn't matter. I mean, like I'm gonna lose it all if I drink again. So my core always has to be the program. My core has to be the work that I do in the program to gain a connection with a higher power on a daily basis. And as long as I'm doing that, I can go to all the church I want to. I can do all the manifesting. I can do all the transcendental meditation. I can do all the affirmations. As long as I'm willing to, sponsor and do and work with a sponsor other men, go to meetings, be of service, do inventory on a regular basis, and pray to God throughout the day. As long as I'm willing to do those things, then everything else is a plus. So that's all I got. I'll pass. Thank you.
Thanks, Xavier. Jim, come on in.
Hi everyone, I'm Jim. I am an alcoholic. I gotta tell you, I always believed in a power greater than myself. I always knew there was an all-powerful, guiding, creative intelligence. But for some reason, I think what held me back was I felt like I needed to to name it or something and know what it was. And I wanted to use this power to do my own will. I wanted to, use it somehow like to, create my own reality and make things happen the way I wanted them. And when I finally got past this, I found that by surrendering my will to this higher power, rather than trying to use it to enforce my will, wonderful things began to happen in my life. And it's just, you know, I don't know how I came to the conclusion, but it was like I just stopped trying to figure out what it was or trying to name it and trying to use it, and instead just let that power happen through me. Like I said, wonderful things are happening in my life for me. The obsession to drink has been lifted from me amazingly. And it's just, I think it all came down to my will. Like I said, I was trying to find some kind of power for myself rather than turning myself over to it. And I find now that I've turned myself over to this power, and I pray every day to do God's will. I call my higher power God, and I open myself up to it rather than trying to control it. And wonderful things are happening for me. And I think that's about all I can say. I guess I don't know what else to say.
Thanks, Jim. Art, would you like to come in and share with us?
Hi, everybody. My name is Art. I'm a grateful recovered alcoholic. You know, I've always been impressed with that dissertation, the spiritual experience, that Appendix 2. Because it gave me the assurance that I wasn't a failure because I didn't have a sudden experience such as was described by Bill in his story. And it's okay for that not to happen. It says, though frequent is not the rule. So most of us don't have that kind of experience. And then it tells us at the end, just before the quote, that willingness, honesty, and open-mindedness are the essentials to recovery. And you know, we hear a lot about how honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness, and I think that's kind of not that's not what the book tells us. What it tells us is that the order in which they're given is willingness comes first, and then I become honest, and then I open my mind to the possibility that I need to learn something. So rather than looking at the how, we look at the who. And the who in this context is God. The higher power that we have established a relationship with. And that relationship has to be established through a series of steps. And it takes the steps, and in the 12th step it talks about a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. That's 1 through 11. And in my mind, in my experience, that is an absolute promise, a guarantee that if I take these first 11 steps and make an attempt to incorporate them into my life, I will have a spiritual awakening. Can't be avoided. It's going to happen. And my experience was that it happened gradually through the process of taking the steps. And it's my understanding, and I, my understanding and application of the steps has evolved over the years. It's not the same as it was when I was at the 5-year mark or at the 10-year mark. But what I've discovered is that each one of these steps carries with it a spiritual experience. And these spiritual experiences that are part of the process of taking steps culminate in a spiritual awakening in the 12th step. You see, what happens with, at least in my experience, what happened was that my use of alcohol, which I thought was the answer to all my problems, and it turned out to be the enemy. But my use of alcohol deadened my spirit, and it needed to be awakened. And that, in my experience, was a process that took years. And in the end, the final instruction of step 12 is that we practice these principles in all our affairs. And when I do that, I get to be free. I get to be at peace. And it is not dependent on the circumstances of my life. It's dependent on my connection with that power greater than myself that I call God. And I don't have to try to figure it out. I don't have to ask the why questions. I just have to believe that God is in charge of my life and let him do his work. This chapter that we're studying right now is opening up that willingness, that open-mindedness that allows me to develop a relationship with my God. And that relationship then allows me to be free. So thanks for asking me.
Thanks, Art. Anybody else? Okay, then I will go ahead and read out our closing, and then we'll give it back to Terry to pray us out. From page 164. Our book is meant to be suggestive only. We realize we know only a little. God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. Ask him in your morning meditation what you can do each day for the man who is still sick. The answers will come if your own house is in order. But obviously you cannot transmit something you haven't got. See to it that your relationship with him is right, and great events will come to pass for you and countless others. This is the great fact for us. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to Him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then.
Thanks, Trish. We do something special in this group since we can't all be together holding hands. We hold up our hands so we could virtually hold hands and be connected that way. So after a moment of silence, moment of prayer for those who still suffer from this horrible disease, I'll ask you to join me in the Lord's Prayer. Who takes us from shame to glory if we let it? Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the power
and the glory,
forever and ever.
Amen.
Forever and ever. Amen. And don't go away, everybody, unless you have to. The room is still open.